fundamentally, entrepreneurs are, we're some sort of combo of rebels, right? I find myself to often be a rebel. And I don't mean like I was disobeying my parents and doing stuff I shouldn't have done necessarily, although I did plenty of that too. I mean, if we see something and we think there's got to be a better way to do that, right? I think that's part of where the entrepreneurial spirit comes from. I think most of us have an innate desire for freedom. Freedom in our work style, freedom in our habits. I think that's also kind of related to that rebel mentality. I think the best of us, there's an inherent desire to do something good for the world, right? And I think business has a powerful opportunity to do good for the world. And go to our website, you'll see that. Like, we very much believe that the small business engine, so let's stop with all the political talk, the big business engine, any business engine has an opportunity to do really good things for the world. And where it's done well, we see those innovations and that good for the world all over the place.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we're going to talk about developing employees that have an entrepreneurial spirit. You may be asking yourself, why do I want them to have an entrepreneurial spirit? Well, there's many reasons. We're going to unpack them today in our special episode on this entrepreneurial spirit. We have the CEO and co-founder of MLA Companies. He is Seth Morgan. They made the Inc. list, and they got about 40 employees. And one of the things that has contributed the most to their success is by having this entrepreneurial spirit that just flows through the organization. So how do you develop people to have this entrepreneurial spirit? Well, you coach them. You have the right conversations, you hold them accountable, you empower them, and you really figure out how do you unleash that entrepreneurial spirit in people that want it unleashed. Not everybody who's ready for that. I get that. There is some elements of that you need to be aware of. When you are, embracing the entrepreneurial spirit in your organization, some people might get the courage and have a business idea to go out on their own. That's actually not a bad thing. Because most people don't want to do that, but they do want to take something and build something and solve the problems. And they do that in the comfort of a working engagement with a guaranteed check. That's where most people would like to be as it relates to the entrepreneur spirit. Not all of us are going to be entrepreneurs, but today we talk about developing that entrepreneur spirit in your employees. So when you are thinking about your own scaling and growth of your company, I want you to think about my name, Gene Hammett. I'm an executive coach. We have leadership development, and we work with companies to help them continue scaling, help them through some of the trials and tribulations of the pains of growth. We work primarily with fast growth companies. Most of our clients are on the Inc. 5000 or other fast growth list, and we help them do this. And if you are interested in kind of connecting with others like this, we do put together something called the Executive Virtual Conversations, where we have a topic every month. And it's not a webinar, but it truly is people engaging around this topic and sharing their insights, their problems, how they've addressed it, and sharing with others. It's about an hour long. If you're curious about that, it's absolutely free. All you have to do, go to coreelevation.com/virtual conversations. You can sign up today if the topic resonates with you. And if the topic doesn't resonate with you, you can still sign up and we will keep you apprised of the next available one. And if it does work for you, we'd love for you to join us. So that being said, all you have to do is go to genehammett.com. That being said, all you have to do is go to coreelevation.com and /virtual conversations. Now here's the interview with Seth. Seth, how are you?
Great. Good to see you, Gene.
We're going to have a great conversation today about the entrepreneurial spirit. Before we dive into that, tell us about MLA Companies.
Yeah, so MLA Companies today, Gene, is really 3 different brands. It started as a fractional CFO group. That group has grown to about 30 folks. There's CFO services and there's other fractional C-suite services in there as well. So we do a variety of products and projects and long-term green tree type contractual services with our clients, focusing on $5 to $50 million companies in that revenue range.
Okay.
Out of that grew a CPA brand. I'm a CPA. That's my classical training, and so just the entrepreneur in me. There's a long reason, which I won't bore your audience with right now, but why we launched the CPA brand. So that's being led by a different leader. That's small and growing. We're acquisitive and growing that organically as well, but we're excited about that. That's really kind of very much an entrepreneurial play for me individually. Important service for our clients. Sometimes there's crossover in those clients. Most of the time, there's actually not. And then this year, we're launching an M&A service brand as well. So boutique, intermediary, investment bank type service. We've been doing that work for our clients for many, many years. I've got a background in mergers and acquisitions and frankly, Gene, I plan to go build and grow that myself. So the CFO group is out doing its thing. We're hiring a leader to take that role and helm day to day. The M&A service I'll lead day to day because I have an actual interest in that going forward. So that's MLA in a nutshell. 3 brands serving that $5 to $50 million market, and passionate about owners and leadership teams that are working through their first, second, third, 10th version of scaling and all the problems that come with that.
Well, we work with similar type companies. A lot of my clients are in that 5 to 50 million range. I'm kind of curious, you work with a lot of CEOs just like I do. What do you wish they understood about your world that they don't seem to understand as easily as, even though you explain it over and over and over?
Yeah, Gene, that's a great question, because what I find is I have to eat my own dog food as well. So everybody needs a coach, everybody needs a CFO, everybody needs a COO. You can go right down the different O's or E's or M's or I's, the C-suite. But what we're really getting at, Gene, right, is not everybody has perfect clarity when they look in the mirror, right? We don't see ourselves perfectly. We're blinded by our own biases about ourselves, both negative and positive biases about our businesses. I've hired a coach. I've been part of C-suite roundtables. Here I am, the advice giver, and I need to go get advice. And the same is true when we think about developing leadership teams, right? I can't do everything. One of the moments for me was when I realized, and I hate to verbalize it this way because it sounds so arrogant, but I think your audience will understand this. There's probably no one better than me to make any given decision about our company on any given day. But the reality is I'm not going to make all those decisions because there's too many now to make. And even if I make them, I'm going to give it that 30-second ADD type CEO, owner, visionary input, and then I'm going to stop managing it because it's boring to me. And so what I realized is I've got to find people that have, the classic alternate skill set to me, alternate discipline set to me, that have the bandwidth and desire to take that type of careful management approach. And that ultimately is what will help scale a business. So what I wish is that they had a quicker understanding of, we classically started as a CFO organization. We're into many other things now, but it's that they need that type of outside perspective or even inside perspective. And folks normally in that $5 to $50 million range, they can't afford to hire the type of CFOs that we're putting into the market. So it's often just an education issue for me, that I wish they were more educated about those things. I wish they would take more risk and confidence in themselves to spend on themselves, because normally that's what predicts the next round of growth for them at the top and bottom line.
Excellent. I'm glad that you had a chance to explain how you're working and how you're eating your own dog food, because it's really important. But it also, I love the part in there about you could make all the decisions in your company as it scales, but you don't want to. Like, you'll become the bottleneck of growth if you've got to weigh in on everything, and you're probably not making the best decisions if you only have 30 seconds.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. I often say, I was at a lunch today, Gene, I don't want to mess around with $50, right? Or call it $500 or $900. And it's not because I'm so wealthy. I'm not. I don't come from much. We're still building. But I've got bigger decisions to make with higher financial impact. But somebody ought to be worrying about that $900, right? And for too long, I led the business where I was doing all those things. I was worrying about the $900 decision and the $900,000 decision, right? And what got all of my focus and attention? Well, it was the bigger decisions, and rightfully so. But what that means is there's a ton of opportunity that's probably frustrating my team, destroying our brand in certain ways, losing profit, right? That if I would have just hired the right person that does have the appetite to care about those things, they would have probably saved me a lot of money, made me a lot of money, solved a lot of frustrations, and made us a better brand. And so that's what I'm having to learn right alongside of our clients.
Now, Seth just talked about the CEO making all the decisions. Now, you may think that sounds like the right plan. That's who you are. That's how you run your business. But as you scale, it's impossible for you to do this. So I'll give you a framework or rubric, if you will, that I have borrowed from Jeff Bezos, because I think it's pretty powerful and it's very clear. Some decisions are one-way doors and some are two-way doors. Those that are two-way doors are easily fixed, and you should encourage your employees to make the decisions that are two-way doors, because they can do it with limited amount of data, and they can, recorrect themselves, or they can redirect their energies. But one-way doors are very hard to undo. If you were going to buy a building, right, that's a one-way door. It's very hard to undo. So you want to make sure that you have that conversation with them about two-way doors and one-way doors. You can talk about Jeff Bezos. You can look it up to get a little bit more understanding of how he uses it. But I should share it with you today, because if you want people to make more decisions, let them make the two-way door decisions as much as you can. It'll help you scale. Back to Seth. Well, let's dive into this, because I think there's a real smooth transition from getting employees to make decisions and encouraging that entrepreneurial spirit So when you think about the entrepreneurial spirit, how do you describe that to others?
Gene, that's tough. And I figured a question like this would come up because I don't know that I've got a great way to describe it to others. But I think fundamentally, entrepreneurs are, we're some sort of combo of rebels, right? I find myself to often be a rebel. And I don't mean like I was disobeying my parents and doing stuff I shouldn't have done necessarily, although I did plenty of that too. I mean, like we see something and we think there's got to be a better way to do that, right? I think that's part of where the entrepreneurial spirit comes from. I think most of us have an innate desire for freedom, freedom in our work style, freedom in our habits. I think that's also kind of related to that rebel mentality. I think the best of us, there's an inherent desire to do something good for the world, right? And I think business has a powerful opportunity to do good for the world. And go to our website, you'll see that. Like we very much believe that the small business engine, but let's stop with all the political talk. The big business engine, any business engine has an opportunity to do really good things for the world. And where it's done well, we see those innovations and that good for the world all over the place. I'm sitting in a Starbucks right now because of my day. Like innovation in the coffee market, people paying ridiculous amounts of money for a freaking Starbucks. Why? Because they, in some ways, did good for the world. They created a superior brand, et cetera. I won't unpack all that. You can have your own opinion about that. So I think it's a combo of those things. And then also, and I would hesitate to call these folks entrepreneurs, but we've got, and probably some of your audience are folks that have found themselves where they've kind of inherited this position. They've kind of landed in a quote entrepreneurial position, like they're the owner because dad was an owner. They kind of inherited that. I'm going to encourage those people to find freedom, and maybe that's not who they are. Like I think there's I'm a CPA, right? Trained in that. Most CPAs are not entrepreneurs. They just, and it was after I started working in the merger and acquisition world and got a bigger, broader view of business because I didn't come from a business family that I found that entrepreneur itch. And it was me saying, there's more to business. There's a desire to learn how business operates, how it makes money, and then ultimately to go do my own thing. And that then led me to find those other passions, doing good for the world. How do I not just make a buck? I can make a buck selling coffee. I can make a buck selling services. I can make a buck making a widget. But I think the most impactful businesses are those where the entrepreneur is saying, yes, but this is how it connects to the larger vision of what we're trying to accomplish in the world, not just to make a buck, because we can make a buck doing anything. I don't want to offend your audience, but my partner, and he would have never done this. He was a very ethical man. God rest his soul. He passed away a couple of years ago. But he said when we started, and he was a financial partner, a mentor to me, he said, Seth, you want to make a lot of money, let's do drugs or prostitution. And his point was not that he was for those things. He was trying to illustrate this isn't just about making money. Let's find something that we can be passionate about that's good, that we can make a respectable return on, and let's do it really well.
When you're assessing whether someone has an entrepreneurial spirit or not, probably in the interviewing process, what are your go-to strategies for that?
Yeah, I think so. For us, it's not quite your question, Gene, but let me go there and then maybe I can circle back. We try to figure out very quickly, and I have to eat my own dog food. We think first in terms of owner, which is normally where an entrepreneur is, right? Because they started something versus steward. So we're thinking in terms of, do you view yourself as like some would maybe call it abundance versus scarcity. There's a million cliche consultancy terms that have been put around it. The bottom line is, do you view yourself as a steward, a garden, someone that is trying to build upon build. We would call that scale in the business world. Someone that views the community that you're building, whether it's your employees, your family, your customers, your vendors, the places you've not yet even played, as kind of a place that you are going to continue to make good out of, or do you view it as just something as a entitlement? I'm doing this in order, kind of like my partner said, jokingly, drugs and prostitution. I'm going to exploit versus build and scale. So for MLA, we probably think more in terms of steward versus owner. We think the best entrepreneurs are those that, again, have found that innate, whatever it is, passion drive, where they're saying, I see an opportunity to solve a problem that helps humanity in XYZ way. And that normally creates the best of stewards. I think we can talk in kind of general philosophy a little later today. I have a call on behalf of one of our longest term clients, goes all the way back to the first year we were in business in 2006. This dude is a classic entrepreneur. He makes things better everywhere he goes. You can define it in kind of they normally have a case of ADD and OCD combined. I speak for that myself. They've got this reformer attitude where they look at something and say, let's make it better. They're finding the opportunity of inefficiency all along the way. I mean, those are the normal kind of people traits, but I'd like to think more of the I don't know if it's philosophy, the philosophic traits, if you will, of saying, but why? What's the why behind it? And normally those are the the most entrepreneurial folks we find is where they're being driven to repeat the success over and over again, not just exploit. Because the exploiters eventually find a way to exit someplace to make enough money, or they exploit themselves right into prison, whatever it is.
There's some pros and cons to this entrepreneurial spirit inside of our workforce. I know when I was working for others, I would offer to do things or fix things or address things that were broken, and they didn't want to look at those things. They wanted to put me in a box somewhere, and it was really hard for me because of my natural entrepreneurial thinking to just accept that's my little lane. And I ended up quitting and starting my own thing, which is what I do now because I'm in a better place. Right. But how do you coach someone or develop someone in that entrepreneurial spirit that's ideal for your company culture?
So for MLA, I think just because we're in the professional service space, there's we had a young man that was a rock star for us, worked for us for years, kind of burned himself out. There's reasons we could go into that, reflect poor leadership on my part that I didn't recognize that earlier and helping through that. Ended up going off and being a business owner and getting involved in funds and, just incredible entrepreneurial spirit to come alive. Now lives in Virginia, doing very well. Great guy. Shout out to Joe Davis if he's listening to you. So, I think that was a case where I didn't develop the entrepreneurial spirit well. We have the unique opportunity just because of what we do of giving pathways to entrepreneurism, because for us, our revenue model is very much, how much you can book in revenue, building a team under you, leveraging yourself over and over again. Yeah, I agree, Gene. There's a certain risk, but I think that goes back to the exploit versus steward, right? So if I find someone in my organization that has an entrepreneurial spirit, just like Perry Loyal, again, my former partner, instead of squelching that, I think finding the opportunity to enable that, thinking more abundantly and recognizing that if I enable that, if I let that person develop and find their own way in that, there's probably a way for me to make money too. And I'm not just talking about that to make money, but there's normally enough to go around. Like a good entrepreneur, if that young developing talent's a good entrepreneur, they're going to immediately recognize pretty quickly, I need support in these various different ways and mentorship and guidance. And so I think generally looking at as a good steward and saying, these are God-given innate talents that have been given to that person just like was given to me. And the opportunity for that to flourish and support that is another form of good in the world. I think some of the best entrepreneurs are the ones that see that in their people, develop that in their people, watch that flourish, and almost view it as another vineyard next to theirs that's now been planted, that's doing more good to the world. What an incredible legacy. Certainly the one that I want told about me, if there is ever one to be about me in the future. I mean, that to me would be the ultimate stamp of success.
Seth, we're talking about developing employees with an entrepreneurial spirit today. And I still want to just ask you, I don't know if you call it coaching, you might call it something else, but how do you truly connect with someone who might be struggling with the entrepreneurial spirit, making decisions when you need them to, or seeing these bigger opportunities that are out there, instead of just putting their head down and saying, this is my job responsibility, I'm going to just do that. How do you coach them through those elements?
So MLA runs something we call the business redeem process, and I won't unpack that. It's not an advertisement for MLA, but it very much recognizes that humanity, organizations, because organizations are run by humans, they go through these cycles of scaling, these cycles of abundance and scarcity, these cycles of investment and harvesting. And I think that's true inside the entrepreneur's life as well. So, I think the way to think about that coaching and that coaching role or environment, my son over the weekend, right? So he's being raised by an entrepreneur, second year in college, came to me, not over the weekend, over the Christmas break. He came to me and said, Dad, I want to start my own business. And, talk about a microcosm of entrepreneurial spirit, right? I don't even know if he knows what that means, but we got real practical about what does that actually look like, right? Certainly we talked revenue models. We talked about 2 fundamental ways to make money, trading time for money or money for money, right? We talked about all those kind of axioms that we all kind of know innately as owners and leaders. But what I encourage him to do is take the small step, reap the reward, learn from the step, take the next larger step, reap the reward, learn from the step. And so for me, I suppose there are people out there that are sitting on tons of cash trying to figure out what business do I buy or launch. My entrepreneurial journey was very much take the small step, learn from it, get my head beat up a couple times, take the next step, learn from it, get my head beat up a couple times. And we generally think of that in our terms with even our clients, the clients that are doing 25 million in revenue, because all of us are in some not quite there yet stage of scale, right? And I think that is the journey, right? We're going to stay there. We're going to stay there individually as people. We're going to stay there in organizations. And so for me, it normally is about saying, okay, what can we do today that helps feed that entrepreneurial spirit, that gives you insight to your conversation or knowledge that you can then leverage off of to take the next larger step without, maybe it's a financial decision, maybe it's without putting at risk everything you own. Maybe it's a mental decision, like, I'm not certain if that's really me yet. I'm not certain if I have the appetite yet for that risk. Some of it, and this I think is the real critical thing that we all are looking for in entrepreneurs, it's the grit question, right? Do you have the grit to do both? Do you have the grit? Because that is the entrepreneur's life. It starts with cleaning toilets and doing sales presentations, right? And then eventually you're doing just sales presentations. Then eventually you're developing the leader who's doing the sales presentation. So it's that grit of being able to walk and chew gum and be execution and visionary at the same time, and learning how to, I think, cadence those into scalability. Because my experience has been, even when I get done with doing it in this section of my business, I turn right around and I have to do the same type of gritty thing in the next section of my business if I'm going to continue to grow, or with the next person, or with the next department, or with the next market that we're trying to develop, or whatever that is.
He's been talking about coaching entrepreneurial people. And I will just remind you that not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Only 5% of the world or so are entrepreneurs. That means we're willing to go out there and create value in the world and without a guaranteed paycheck, and we're willing to take those risks. Most people aren't able to do it or willing to do it. And so it's okay to encourage that entrepreneur spirit. And one way to do that is by truly empowering them as best you can. And so I ask you, could you empower more people across your organization? Could you empower them better? That is your task for today. Back to Seth. We've been talking about, developing employees with that entrepreneurial spirit. Is there anything we've left out that you feel like is really important to this conversation?
I don't think so. I think the one thing I would say, Gene, and it's something you did raise, is, I hear the risk, for all of us in entrepreneurs, having an entrepreneur workforce feels a little risky, right? Because they always want to do something better. They want to change something, or there's flight risk. And I think if we really understand humanity and we really care about our people, getting the quote, right people in the right place on the bus, we'll recognize that. And maybe we ought to just flip that. And I'm speaking to myself too, and look for those entrepreneurs inside of our organization to facilitate that growth, even if it means an off-ramp eventually for them. It's interesting, Joe Davis, the gentleman that I referred to with love and appreciation, he's a great guy, and he's referred works with a sense, right? He is not that I had to get something out of that, but it's been fun to watch him develop as a leader to the point where he's even come back to the organization that he got his professional launch in. So,
Seth, thanks for being here, being a part of the show, talking about leadership and developing employees with that entrepreneur spirit.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Wow, what a great interview. I love having this. And right at the end, he talked about, employees going out on their own. It is a risk, but if you can harness that and you can put people into a situation where they don't have to take the risk and they can feel empowered, you will get a lot more out of it. So I encourage you to do that. If there's any executive coaching we could offer you as you're scaling your company, or maybe it's for your managers or becoming leaders, let us know. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. And as always, courage. We'll see you next time.